You always read on the internet where people say when they're talking about Second Amendment how you know you'll get my guns when they prime from my cold dead fingers, or some other way that they think they're the last stand at what was that place down in Texas, the Alamo, where yeah we're at the Alamo and we're up against the masses and we're gonna fight till the last man. That ain't the way they're gonna take them. They're going to slowly over time, well, not maybe even slowly, if these communists that are trying to group together in this country get elected, what they're going to do is start writing laws that will fine you for not turning in your weapons. In other words, they'll fine you, and then after a while, those fines will add up like those cattle ranchers in, where is it, Wyoming or Montana, wherever they had that shootout over the cattle grazing on government land. What they'll do is they'll fine you. I'm pretty sure this is on the internet somewhere. And the fines it'll increase. Whatever it is. Like for the first month, you're allowed like a month or maybe 6 months to turn your weapons in. Then it'll be after that 6 months, it'll be so much money to turn your weapons in. And that'll be a year. After that year, then it exponentially doubles or triples or even compounds to where the fine after 1 year of not turning a weapon in is like, who knows what, whatever. But then it'll be like, the government will come in, and for you not paying these fines, adding it to your tax or whatever, and taking your land and house, and that's how it'll be. And then you'll just be, you'll see one person, and they'll make a stand. You can't take my house and land, just because everybody. There's going to be people. Well, I don't want to actually. I just use mine for hunting and. It's the old, well, I'm not here to kill anybody. Even though the ones that say they've served and all that stuff, they say, well, they're going to take our weapons, and they'll just be walked into a place where they're in a corner, and they say, well, do you really want to kill somebody that's going to take your guns? And, you go to jail for that. If you kill somebody, you're going to go to jail for that. And they're going to make them think, well, be a responsible citizen and, let us take them and stuff, because otherwise we're going to fine you right out of your home, and you won't be able to afford anything, and then you won't be able to get a job because everybody will be, what do they call it, compliant communists, and you won't be able to find a job because, well, if you're not a compliant communist and you went, he didn't turn in his weapons on time, everybody else turned their weapons in on time, and well, what would he be like in the job place? So he won't work, and everything we tell him, it'll be, he won't do anything we tell him, because if it's like anything like him turning in his weapons, then we're going to have to argue with him about everything. So we're not going to hire him because we're good little communists. And that's how it's going to be. It's not going to be they're going to come to your house with a squadron of freaking tanks, have helicopters hovering. They're just going to fine you right out of a job, because they're going to say, well, we're going to take right out of your paycheck. If you won't pay your fines, then we're going to go to your paycheck, and you'll just be fined out of your paycheck, and then you'll be, if you keep your guns, it'll just be you're working for nothing to keep your guns. You goes, wow, are these guns really worth that? I don't want to lose my house. I don't want to lose my car. I got a family. Blah blah blah. All this, that, and the other. And are people gonna? To what point is people going to do that? Otherwise you're going to have to attack. Even if you do attack, an individual. Well, we got 16 people. We're going to go to D.C. and we're going to attack whoever it is that's in charge of these bills that are fining us, or you're going to attack your state or whatever. Whoever would be the people that would come to your house, or whoever's got their name attached to the things that are taking money out of your paycheck for paying paying the fines. That's how they're going to do it. They're not going to come to your door, knock on your door, and have a couple cops there with weapons drawn, and you're in a sandbag concertina with foxholes dug outside. And you got machine guns and stuff. It ain't going to be nothing like that. They're just going to do it all on paperwork, and that's how it's always planned. So all these people saying, well, when you pry my cold dead fingers, you'll be cold dead fingers because they're going to drive you into homelessness, and you'll be sleeping in a ditch and get snowed on, and your gun will be clenched in your frozen freaking fingers. I mean, does anybody want to live like a homeless person? I mean, even that. I mean, how many? What if they step up? All these homeless people are walking around with guns now. And cops aren't stopping them because this, that, and the other, So all these people, acting like they're Joe Stockhold, and they're going to hold out in a Jesse James style shootout or Billy the Kid style shootout where, come get me, copper. Ain't no movie. That's how the government works on everything. They just fine you, and then that goes on your record, and it basically, popularity-wise, puts you out of a job by defining your rights, which will be closed, because all they got to do is word this and that. They start wording where well, the only thing I see is the bump stocks. Now, I'll say the bump stocks, those are people skirting the law of automatic fire. I mean, there's other ways. There's a guy saying that you can hold your semi-automatic in your belt loop and fire like that, which I think I learned that in the Army. I think in basic training, they said if you wanted to fire, or somebody might have shown something like that where you hook your finger in your belt loop and you can fire. It's like an automatic. It's not like an automatic, because an automatic, you don't have to hold it down. You can actually aim it. But a bump stock is basically skirting the law of automatic weapons, where these guys that have automatic weapons, and they buy them and they pay big money to have an automatic weapons permit. And then these guys just skirting the law with bump stocks. They're, I don't know if these guys are up in arms that have automatic weapons permits, and they're saying, look at these guys, they get bump stocks and they got automatic weapons, and I don't know what, they might not do anything. They're probably so compliant with the law that they don't say anything out of context or anything, They might not talk out or anything. But I don't see the necessitation of bump stocks. I mean, that's automatic fire is a waste of ammo anyway. I mean, that's only for the only time you'd use that is with a machine gun and a T&E in a defensive position for grazing fire. I mean, or assaulting, or a last break or last chance effort. I mean, who wants, it gets, you're a lot more accurate not firing automatic. The first time you do it, I did it, I don't know what it was, it's probably M16, but then you do it and it's like, wow, that's, I'd rather take my time and hit my target than just open fire, and have a, I'd rather fire a 50 cal on a T&E in a tripod or some sort of swivel base where I can use a T&E to stabilize a gun than to just have it loose, and I don't know. But I'm just saying that all these people claiming that they're going to make a last ditch effort or last stand in their home, and they're going to kill a bunch of cops or whoever it is that's they're going to assign to come around and just, they're going to come to your doorway and take your weapons. It's, they're first going to put into a bill, of course, a bump stock did, like I said, bump stocks, that's kind of a skirting the law of automatic weapon permits. And I don't know, people that's never fired automatic, the military, I don't know if there's anybody in the military that even want a bump stock. There might be, I don't know. There's some people that just are over motivated just to, it's almost, anyway. But they're going to, just saying that they started bump stocks. Okay, they've already got bump stocks. And then they're going to start at, then they go to a semi-automatic. What was it? I was watching some special forces talking about escape and evasion. They're saying how the M16 and what was it, AK-47, they're not actually assault weapons. They're never classified as assault weapons. The M16 or, that's what it was. The M16 and the 45 pistol were never classified as assault weapons. They're just, they're more of a, basically, we used to have a defensive posture in this country. And we just turned into an offensive or a, not first strike, whatever it is, a first strike when Bush turned it from defensive posture, which we used to be into, an offensive posture. But it's not offensive posture, it's whatever they call it, where we're first to strike instead of allowing them to strike us again or first. So we make the first strike instead of a defensive posture, which is where we used to be. Now I don't know if we dropped off that. I haven't heard that we're back into a defensive posture, but I don't think I've heard that we're back in a defensive posture. I think we're still in a first strike posture, and that ever since we've been in that first strike posture. Well, no, that those school shootings when did we turn into from defense? I don't know if I was in the military at the time. Maybe it was when they went into the first Desert Storm. I was in the military then, but maybe that's when we went into an offensive posture and we thought, well, we better get out there. Or was it after World Trade Center bombing, or when the planes flew into them? I don't know. Anyway, I guess it would have, because that school shooting out there in Colorado was in, it was in 98, 99? Was it 97? No. Because I was living out in Colorado at the time that happened. I remember that. But anyway, the posture we're in, I was thinking maybe had a perpetuation to what caused the school shootings to upgrade. But a lot of those, I remember being in high school, and I graduated in like 78. And I remember some guys arguing, and it was like it didn't have anything to do. They didn't have anything to do with what they were arguing about. It was like, I don't know if anybody's ever been around it where somebody is arguing somebody else's argument. And it ended up being, I think that school shooting out there in Colorado, the Columbine shooting, I think that shooting came from when the parents of those kids were arguing back when they was in school. And I don't know, I'm not sure if it was a racial thing back then, but then it was settled, but it must have it must have internalized and become something that their kids took on. And it might be, I don't know, a lot of this stuff, a lot of things that are happening now were like quelled, like all these wars. Because I remember, the whole reason that we have the M1 Abrams and the Bradley is it because they was planning for those aren't really, they weren't planning for a force type of, tanks that are narrow. The Bradley and the Abrams are both wide stance and high speed tanks. Unlike something that would go through a forest, you'd want something like more narrow so you'd be able to navigate through trees and stuff like that. But they're wide, and they had already been planning this desert war, and it didn't really turn out. I don't think it's not as it was. It was a big war. There was a lot of tanks out there that were sweeping across in Desert Storm. Yeah, that was a big sweep, but it wasn't a war like in a World War One or basically World War II, where it was a big tank war. It was up against nothing. It was up against stationary, not even decommissioned, just broken down, unmaintained stuff. But it was they had planned. I don't know how long they had planned. I don't even know why. I never got into the whys or what brought it on that they wanted to take over. Maybe it was just everybody going for oil, and there was a big argument over oil prices, because I know Europe had a high price. When I went in twice in the military, and the first, the first or second time, I never drove a car there. I always took trains everywhere. Trains or walked or maybe hitchhiked. And but the prices of fuel there was it's like it is now in the U.S. It was like I think it was even higher back in the 80s, higher than it was now. Back then it was like $3-4 a gallon, only they sold it by the liter. It was like, I don't know if it was, I can't remember how much it was, but I know it was added up to like $3 a gallon back in the 80s in Germany. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of freaking money. And I came back, and then it just started escalating because Bush was going in, and they just escalated the price out of it. And but they started that. In fact, they started that war. I don't know. I wouldn't put a name to it, but it was started back in, I don't know, late 60s, maybe early 70s. And they were trying to build up, I don't know if it was be called it's a lot of this stuff is everything's so subliminal of people. I don't know if it was government at the time, just like a Nixon. They was that administration. He was like, man, the Chinese got a lot of money in gold and stuff, and they was wanting to borrow money back in the 60s. I remember that when Nixon was in, and they was like, man, they could not wait to get they wanted to borrow China. They wanted to borrow $1 trillion back then from China, because they thought, well, China, if we borrow from them, and they was thinking, well, even though China's been around a freaking long time, and there's a lot of corruption and deception and everything else, and the U.S. being a new country, a couple hundred years old, they're thinking like, well, we're smart, we're a superpower, and we can go into China and we can borrow $1 trillion, and it'll be like stealing money from a baby or whatever, stealing candy from a baby, and we'll just take it and then we'll pay him back or whatever. Because I think a lot of a lot of the oil deals are people in the that said, how our government changes hands every 4 to 8 years, where a lot of governments, they keep them in for, how it used to be. They stay in like an emperor, even in Europe. I can't remember when they went to democratic society, but anyway, I'm not really a government historical buff, but the way that our government can make a deal, and then the administration that made the deal is out and elected out, or a new administration is moved in, and they say, well, that was the last administration deals. This is a new administration deals, and we don't abide by those deals unless it was something that would jeopardize, like jeopardize something that the U.S. would have to deal with, like raising fuel prices back in they started back in the 70s. Was it 73 or 72 or 74 or something like that, where they started jacking up the prices and cut down a lot of travel, and they started implementing all the pollution stuff. And anyway, I can't remember what it was, but I just know they jacked up the price of fuel a little bit, and then they started knocking back the fuel mileage. It's all been to make more money for people in the oil industry. Now, why they got so much pull, I don't know. But everybody knows. I mean, this is known. But I'm just saying that war was started, Iraq war. But basically, they've all been. It's just they put them into plan. They plan for wars ahead of when there is a war. It's, I don't know what they call it, planning, I guess. So they probably got plans of wars all over the country, and then people fall into how they planned, and that's where these what do they call them, conspiracy theories come up, saying, well, they